idea. Good. So welcome everybody to our session. I am Monica Garcia. I'll give you some intro here in a minute, but I want to introduce you to Blackboard. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my screen here. And I'm going to be pulling up my files and get us started in this session. All right, so we are here because with online learning classrooms, a lot of times we have to really find ways to keep our students engaged. And this can be very difficult because if you've never actually taught in an online classroom, it is quite the shift. Let me make sure everybody hear me? Let's get those thumbs up again. If you see the little emojis in the bottom of your screen on the chat box, go ahead and get those thumbs up that you can hear me. All right, awesome. Someone got creative with the angry guy. Awesome. All right, so how do we create an engaging virtual classroom? And the key is that if you are having students in the online classroom, that it's very easy to lose track of whether they are paying attention or not. So really what the focus of today is to find ways to keep everybody engaged in a way that you can still measure whether they have understanding of the information or not. So I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to try something a little bit different because somehow All right, so how to create an engaging virtual classroom. So one of the things I want you to look at, are you ready to learn? One of the things that we can do in an online classroom is we can use polls. So the poll, whether you are ready to learn, click yes or no. Polls are a great way for you to engage your students and allow them to really see whether they're paying attention, whether they are participating, if they've walked away from their screen. Now, granted, in a group this large, sometimes it's difficult for you to really pay attention, really be able to keep track of how many people are actually doing the poll. But with a cool tool like that, like a poll, it's really awesome to utilize. I'm going to try this again. All right, so I am Monica Garcia. I'm the Online Learning Course Director here at Keesler Faculty Development. And our fabulous online learning team includes my two moderators here, Mr. Frank Rosenkrantz and Miss Brittany Hall, who are our IDLE instructors, and they will be assisting me in this. So if you see them as I'm briefing and as I'm discussing some of these items, you might see them elaborating in the chat. They are both very skilled, and actually they will be teaching the webinars that we have coming up as well. Having experience with that, that's totally fine. But in the left-hand side, think about some of the things that we rely on in the physical classroom. What do we need to have a successful class? Like what equipment, what resources do we need when we're in a face-to-face classroom? And go ahead and throw some of those answers in the chat. A projector, visual aids, PowerPoint, students. Yes, we need students. Without students, we don't have classrooms, right? Collaborative activities, study materials, hands-on equipment. What about an instructor? Do we need an instructor? An outstanding instructor, absolutely. Visual presence, yes. All right. So in the physical classroom, if we're not in an active learning classroom, who tends to be the center of that? The instructor, yes. Good. Scott puts the instructor is usually the center. So in a visual classroom, you're going to see what we rely on. So here you can see that in the physical classroom, we rely on that the presenter is the focal point. You have tables, chairs, electricity, so you have furniture. You require eye contact, body language, gesturing. Even though you can't see it right now, I am gesturing quite a bit. It's just me naturally. You can see all the resources here on the list. So in a virtual classroom, though, it's very different. We have participants are responsible for their own setup. You had to have your computer, you had to be responsible for your own internet being set up, you had to be responsible for getting into the room. So participants are responsible for accessing it. You also have to have the consistent network connections. We are not on the AFNet right now, but it's not always consistent, hence why we're on the commercial network. Blackboard, unfortunately, or Collaborate doesn't always work on the AFNet, but I love this platform, and so we are using commercial internet for this. PowerPoint or a shared application is the focal point, so you want to actually have network availability. Yes, that is definitely important. Then you also have to have feedback offered via polls and activities. So those are things that you want to be have in mind as well. And then chat is also the default communication. So you have to be very able to communicate well. Okay. So if someone have a question, I see someone raise their hand. Level of security and privacy. Oh, that's a good one. Yes, you definitely have to be mindful of what your security is as well. Okay. To mute your microphone, if you look at the bottom of your screen, you should be able to see a little microphone icon at the bottom. And I'm going to just apologize in advance if you guys can hear my dogs. They're being extremely mouthy at the moment. They're trying to engage as well. All right, so some things that you can consider when you are starting to plan out your sessions for online. Now, when you have a online or an in-classroom session, one of the things that you would do is you would have your students introduce one another. Well, in an online classroom, how would you do this? So if you have your students do an activity where they're going to introduce themselves, you have to think about it. Turn to your neighbor and how would you do this in traditional classroom? How long does it normally take? How much direction do you give? What do you do visually? In a traditional classroom, that's pretty easy. The instructor's up there, they're giving instructions, they might have a slide presentation, they might gesture, and give examples. So thinking about that, how would you do that online? Is it possible? Those are things you want to consider when you're creating an online session. So thinking about that, how do you all think that you could do that in an online session? Video. Breakout rooms. Oh, I like the breakout rooms. That's a good one. Chat. Collaborative meetings. Chat feature. Great. I like the breakout rooms idea. And yeah, definitely. And Collaborate has that. Many of the teleconferencing areas do have chat breakout rooms, which is a great thing that you can use. Or share one at a time. Now, sharing one at a time could take some time, especially if you have a large group like this. So you want to be mindful of how many students you have. So that's another consideration that you want to take. Raise hand. Yep, you could have them raise their hands and introduce themselves. That's a great thing as well. So what do you think you would need to have on screen? Someone actually just put it, incorporate student info in slides if you have it, such as a location from a roster. Very good. Or you could even have students create their own slides, have that be an exercise. So that would be another thing that you could do as well. And Blackboard, the question is, does Blackboard have the capability to chat one-to-one? It does. So typically, we turned it off for this, but you do have the ability to chat with individual people. So if you click on at the bottom where you have the list of attendees and you click next to their name, you should be able to send a chat directly to that person. Someone raised their hand. Does someone have a question? No, no questions. Okay. But yes, so that is a way so that individuals can raise hands. Does Canvas have similar capabilities to Blackboard? LMSs in general do have similar capabilities. Canvas does not have like their own LMS created teleconferencing like Blackboard. I do know that Canvas has Zoom. Like they have the ability to integrate Zoom into there, and really you can use any kind of teleconferencing and link it into your synchronous platform. And Dr. Jewel Glasscock, she says that you can use the collaboration and people area in Canvas. And then someone put that Canvas uses Adobe Connect at AU. So again, there you can use several different teleconferencing platforms and then just link them into that platform. So you can't use Zoom on a military computer or a military device or a military network, but you can use Zoom on a commercial network. So the question was, I thought we couldn't use Zoom anymore. Zoom, technically, you cannot use it on a military device or government device. If you're using it on your personal device, you can use that. Okay, and Bo put that the Air Force is coming out with zoom.gov. So lots of great information here. Yes, and it does, and Zoom does work great on the commercial network. Everything works great on the commercial network. Everything works so much better when it's not on the AFNet. If someone's from COM, I'm sorry, but you know, that's the truth of the matter. All right, let's go ahead. WebEx is a great product, yes. All right, so we talked about how we might adapt the activity for the virtual classroom. And basically, what would you need to have on your screen? We talked about what type of directions you would need to give, what tools you might use. So great conversation. Do you think it would take longer in an online session rather than it would in a classroom to do that kind of activity? Yes. You think so? So why do you think it would take longer? that's a great point. It definitely depends on the class size. So you think it's quicker? Talking is definitely easier than typing. Yes, students may not be familiar with the setup. Yep, definitely. You don't have to go to each person. They can answer and you can display results. Very good. They may not learn at the same level. You can see confused looks in the classroom. Yes, definitely. Or if someone is sleeping. Well, the point in here is to try and avoid if we see someone sleeping, but yes, we can see someone is sleeping in the classroom. Good. Okay, so let's look at some key things that we want to learn in this session. So a key thing is you want to design to make sure that you get regular feedback. So whether that is polls, activities, chat, as you can see, I've been asking a lot of questions. That way you guys are putting your answers in the chat. So just like we do when we're in the classroom, as instructors, we're asking questions. You can even do direct questions. So if you have someone who put something in the chat, you can kind of direct a question to them. In a smaller classroom, like maybe if you're very familiar with your students, you can even do direct questions to someone whom you might notice isn't responding as much. So it's very easy to do that. What you rely on in the classroom will work differently online. So be mindful of that. Does Blackboard measure activity or inactivity time? As far as the Blackboard session, not that I have seen. However, it will tell you in the actual LMS, it will tell you how long since they've logged in. But as far as whether they're participating in the live session or not, it really doesn't. Feedback or lack of feedback may indicate confusion or sleeping in class. Yes, that's a very, very good point. Very good point. It definitely is important to make sure you get that feedback. And that's one of the most important things about engaging your students online is that I know for me as a student that I like feedback because it will help keep me on track. And also, if you're getting both giving and getting feedback from your students, then it's going to kind of help ensure that they are keeping up with the information. Again, what you rely on will work differently because maybe if you are used to gesturing to emphasize a point, you may not have a camera. So you have to find different ways to either make sure your tone fluctuates to emphasize a point. Maybe your slides, maybe you need to bold words on your slides, underline, yes. So that would be a great way to emphasize what you would do or something that you would foot stomp in the classroom. So we have a question, when possible and appropriate to answer, what is a breakout room? Okay, that's a great question. And if you're not familiar with these platforms, I'm glad you asked that because there might be other people who don't know that. So a breakout room is quite literally a separate area that you can use within the online platform. And essentially what you do is you drag your student into a separate room from the main room. It's like having like little different rooms inside the same classroom. And then that way it allows them to have conversations and then other people can't hear it in the main room. Yes, breakout rooms are great for group projects. But that's a great question. Okay, so moving on, everything requires instructions and setup. So you are going to make sure that you have clear instructions, whether it is in a workbook or a guide that is associated with your session, or if it's on your slides. Or also, you need to make sure that you're creating good instructional guidance for your facilitators. You have to have very detailed instructions to set everything up. So make sure that when you're going through your planning process, you indicate everything that is required for the session. Scripting is more important than ever. What, how, and when you say things. So you actually want to create like a lesson plan that has everything outlined. So you're going to want to, put for timing, you're going to want to put, okay, at this time, we're going to have this slide, or at this time, we're going to have this activity. You want to actually lay out what you're going to say. Whether you have a notes with your slides or whether it is, a separate script, you want to make sure that you have everything that you want to say for each area. All right, visual and verbal cues are more important. So because you are relying on, just as Ron says in the chat, not having face-to-face eliminates 90% of communication, because a lot of times we're going to rely on eye contact, we're going to rely on body language, visuals that are in the classroom. Yes. Scripting to avoid rabbit trails. Yes. You're going to have a lot of things that you need to outline so that as students are not going, as they're doing the activities, you want to give them instructions on what they need to do. So if you are going to have something specific that needs to happen, then you need to either provide a cue on the slide, or you need to have something that gives those students the cues for where they need to go. It's also a visual cue for you as an instructor. So if you have certain things that you want to actually achieve in the classroom, a visual cue for you as well is going to be important. All right, another thing that's important, time online is different than time in the face-to-face classroom. It is very easy for time to get away for you in the online environment, simply because, as you can see, we've had a lot of chat sessions going on. And it can kind of get you off of your train of thought. It can get you off what you had planned out. So you want to really kind of give yourself a little bit more time than you intend, or even plan your session so it might be a little bit shorter than what you anticipate, to really account for the extra time it's going to take for those activities, and any extra time it's going to take for setting up. So just be mindful that your time online is very different than your time face-to-face. I don't know who's marking the slides. No, we did. The question is, who's writing on the slides? Is that a moderator feature? So for this, we are going to have an activity in here in just a minute where I'm going to have you all writing on the slides, so we enable that feature. As a moderator, you can turn that off, but we're going to keep it on for a minute. All right, so there are several different tools that you can use for your virtual classroom. So we have a good question. It says, with online learning, how much screen time is too much for the eyes? I don't know that there's actually a specific amount of time, but you definitely want to take breaks. I know for me, I actually got glasses where they actually have blue light filters that help from reducing eye strain. But I would have to look that up to see if there's actually an amount of time that is recommended where it's too much. But that's a really good question. I've never actually had that question before. All right, so using virtual classroom features, there are a lot of features that you have available to you in the online platform. So you have annotation, which, as you can see, someone is doing by writing on the slides. So that's what we call annotation. VoIP, or integrated telephony, and that is with what we have with the phone or our audio. Polling, we already did that, and we saw that with both the Mentimeter tool and with the polling feature in Collaborate. Chat, and it can be public or private, and you've seen that here in the room. Status indicators or emoticons, which, if you look at the chat feature, what I really like about Collaborate is the fun emojis that are available. We use that quite a bit in our sessions with the thumb. Application sharing, which is what I'm doing right now, using the sharing tool for our slides. Then you also have file sharing, and that is something else that we can do where we can upload certain files that students can have access to, uploading PowerPoints and slides, playing video and audio files. So we have had classes where instructors have played video for the students. So if you had a video that you wanted to share with your students for that classroom session, you can do it within a virtual classroom still. A webcam. Webcam does take a lot of bandwidth though, so you want to be mindful that you're not using it too much. You can give control rights as well. As you can see, we have some moderators in here. So one thing that we're doing in BIC too is we are actually making it so our students are going to have moderator rights, so they can actually do their presentations and control their slides. So that's one way. Say if you have a requirement where students have to give a presentation, you can give them control rights and they can kind of run the classroom. You can record. We're recording this right now. So you can record your session so that students can go back and watch it later. Push websites and links. As you can see, Dr. Jewel Glasscock has already put a lot of links in the chat session, so you can put some links that you can share. Yes, you can move members between moderator and participant rights as the need fits. Absolutely. So Major Nick's input, that you can move them. So within the session here, you're able to change someone's rights while in the session. So even if they might be a participant, if you want to give them moderator rights while you're in the session, you can do that. And then finally, breakout rooms. We've already talked about that at length. We've had some great links already put in here about breakout rooms that you can use in different areas. I think there were links for both Zoom and for Canvas, where there were breakout rooms. If you go to help.blackboard.com, then there's, and you look up Collaborate, they'll explain how to utilize the breakout rooms in there as well. Right, so there's the reason that we like to use these types of tools is because there are different levels of instructional methods. The question is there a virtual platform or app that allows for a shared whiteboard, for example, in a breakout room? Actually, there is, and I will take a moment and I will show that to you guys. If you look in your tools at the bottom, there is something called a shared blank whiteboard. and everybody can write on it. This is a great thing. So if you have someone that wants to demonstrate math, then you can do that as well. And that's a great question because that wasn't one of the tools that was put on there. So I'm glad you asked, because since we are talking about tools, that's a good thing to show. So let's go back down here. All right, instructional methods of learning. So we want to make sure that we are keeping our students engaged. And in doing so, we're really instituting active learning. And this is where we are getting our students the opportunity to discuss, to demonstrate. We can have them practice doing different things. We can even have them teaching one another. And that is all possible in an online classroom. The more that you have them do these active type of learning strategies, the more they are going to be engaged in the lesson. So by having chat, having opportunities for them to share with one another, to collaborate, this really takes it to that active learning level. So keeping all of this in mind, this is going to be an activity. This is your opportunity to use your pen. All right, so if you have your little workbook that I sent all of you, you're going to see a chart. And in that chart, you're going to see different tools. So the ones that are listed is we have our chat, we have our whiteboard, annotation, polls. And then what I want you to do is I want you to look at the descriptions and what activities it might be good for. Now, using your mouse, what I want you to do is on this slide, I want you to connect the tools to which type of activity or which type of level of learning, you'll see they're passive and active, you think would best fit that like knowledge transfer. So we have lecture reading, audiovisual, demonstration, discussion, practice by doing, teaching others, immediate application, real world situation. So like, for instance, if you use your pencil, notes, what kind of things do you think notes would be good for? Where you can have audio visual, or notes would be good for someone who's practiced by doing, or there you go, you guys are getting it. So this really demonstrates that you can, if you want students to participate, you can do an activity like this where you create a slide. This is going to look like a spaghetti art here in a minute. But it gets the opportunity for everybody to participate. So when you're going through and you're creating your slide presentation, it will allow you to plan for activities like this. So that's just a quick activity that I like to do just to demonstrate how you can involve your students and create things already in your presentation just to get them involved, and that you can still have things like this. I know if you have a Smartboard or an Epson Bright, we have a lot of times where we have the students come up and draw on the board, and we ask them to answer a question. So you can still do that here in the online environment by using a tool like this. All right, we're going to go ahead and stop drawing and move on. Someone asked, are you recommending Blackboard as the best virtual classroom app? I honestly, I really like Blackboard great. We've been had very successful sessions in it, but I've found that Zoom works really, really well too. I've used WebEx. WebEx is a good one too. I've used that for school. I actually did this presentation using WebEx for one of my school projects, and they had a lot of the same functionalities. Another one I've used is DCS. If you've come to my Blackboard webinars, I use DCS, which has a lot of the same tools. Someone's writing Air Force Standard. I think best, again, yeah, Annie makes a good point. Best is subjective to what your preference is. So and that we're going to talk about that too here in a minute. Yes, Frank makes a good point. Your specific needs will more than likely dictate your preferences. All right, so let's talk about designing your activities and your sequence. So some things that you want to be mindful of when you are designing your activities is how are they best going to support your content? Because just like in the classroom, you want to find the best tool that is going to enhance your content rather than just trying to be a random tool. So look at what it is that you want to accomplish and then find the best tool that will support that. So you see some examples here. Introductions, we typically do an icebreaker. So a tool that you can do that with is a chat. You can do a poll like I had at the beginning. Then you can introduce a topic or knowledge, and your activity might be lecture, so you can use PowerPoint in that. You can apply a skill, and that could be a demonstration, so you can do application sharing. You can confirm knowledge, or so your activity might be a quiz, so you can do a poll. There's so many different things that you can use, and this is just one example. Again, in the workbook I sent you, that big chart, I love that chart, it has options for all different types of activities on what you can use for and different tools that you can utilize for those activities. So again, you want to select the appropriate tool. Just like with everything in the classroom, you want to make sure that the tool enhances the learning. So if someone asks, how do you best require a certain platform or app for the students, especially if the app is at cost to download, since few or no apps work effectively on Air Force or DoD systems? So typically when I am looking for tools, and this is a great question because Ms. Hall is going to be talking about Web 2.0 tools next week's webinar. But a great thing that I always look at is, does it work on, one, how much does it cost? Is it free? I like to look for the free tools. Two, does it work on the AFNet? So every tool that I try, I test to see if it works on the AFNet and on commercial. And that's one thing that I always look for. There's a lot of resources out there and a lot of tools out there, but when you're testing them, a lot of times I test them on both networks. So you may not be able to require students to download an app, but it is good to look at tools that they can access online from both the AFNet and commercial network. So I don't generally require my students to download anything. Yes, someone put, sometimes units sign on for commercial internet, and we do have that for our training group. We do have commercial internet. Actually, ATC has the Learning Wi-Fi service, which is a commercial network for teaching and learning. Okay, so looking in our book, one of the things that you would be mindful of when you are designing and you are planning is ease of use, because as you can see, and we've had in this discussion, not everybody has the same level of technical savviness, I should say, because so you want to make sure that whatever you use is easy for both the instructor and for the students. So you're going to see this chart in your workbook, but on here, let's talk about this. A chat. Do you think that is simple, moderate, or advanced? Simple. It's easy for students. Do you think it's simple? It's easy for instructors to set up? Simple? Okay. So that's why chat is really good. Someone said moderate. That's okay. Again, it depends on your level. It might be moderate for some, but it might be simple for others. It may be hard to keep up with. Good. Multiple chat pods. Do you think that's simple, moderate, or advanced? Moderate. Definitely moderate because it takes some setting up. Verbal responses. We have some advanced. Verbal responses are very simple. It depends on, to monitor them, it depends on what you're using them for. So if you have group projects going on, it's probably a good idea to monitor your chat pods. Turn over shared app. When we talk about turning over shared app, that's where we're giving controls to the students. Advanced, yeah, because you need to know how to use it. Asking questions via polls. Do you think that's simple, moderate, or advanced? We have a mix on that one. It depends on the platform. Broadcasting a webcam image. Do you think that's simple, moderate, or advanced? Moderate, simple. We have a lot of good mix. It all depends on your level. Playing a video. Depends on students. Yes, simple. Breakout group or discussions. This is kind of like your multiple chat pods. Advanced. And then finally, quizzing or testing. We have a big mix on that one. Again, I mean, it really depends on how you're doing it too. If you're using an external program, it could be a little more complicated. I love that. So it depends on your circumstances. Are you using quizzing in the platform or using quizzing in an external? Oh yeah, so you're classified. So that could definitely be a little complicated. Good. So just things that you want to be mindful of. You need to have measures in place to dissuade cheating. Oh, great point. We're going to talk about cheating and test compromise in our webinar on the 6th. So make sure you guys come back for one. So all things that you want to be mindful of when you are looking at planning your session. So this is what we want to look at when we're building the design for our virtual instruction. You have to look at your pre and between session activities, so the what, who, when, who, and how. How long are your sessions? How often are they going to be? Are you going to record them? How are you going to do assessments? What kind of follow-up are you going to do? Are you going to send an email afterward to get a survey? Are you going to get feedback? Those kind of things that you want to take into account. And also any post-course assessments. Are you going to do anything after the session that gauges the understanding of the material from the students? So be thinking about that as well as you are going through your design. Again, you don't want to just slap something up into your session. You want to be able to have something that flows so that as you are going through, it's a smooth process and you know what you're going to say as you are going through the lesson. And the key thing, you want to think about your 3 T's, your topic, what and how are you going to display it, time, when are you going to hold it, how often are you going to hold it, and your team, who is going to be your target audience, and also who's going to be facilitating it, because you want to look at the capabilities of the facilitator. So in the back of your workbook, I've given you a storyboard chart as well as a planner template and a facilitator guide. So those are some tools that you can use in order to prepare for your sessions. You also want to think about specific activities in your lesson. So, you know, as I was planning this session, I really knew what kind of activities I wanted to do to demonstrate several of the tools. Like I built in that activity in the PowerPoint. I had the polls already prepared. So I knew what I wanted to have within it. You also want to determine how you're going to support or adapt the activity for your virtual classroom. You know, what you can do in the face-to-face, is there a way to do that online? And so as you're planning out your session, think about how can you adapt that so that it can occur in this virtual classroom. Because if you get creative, there are ways to do that. Things that you want to be consider, your technical setup considerations, so your presentations, any animations, graphics, fonts, videos, audio. You can definitely demo with a webcam. So you want to be very mindful of what you have available to you and what you can use when you are getting ready to set up your session. There are a lot of ways to demonstrate. As Michael was saying, you can demonstrate with a webcam. You can demonstrate with screen sharing. I do demos, screen sharing for Blackboard all the time, and it makes it very user-friendly, and it allows the students to actually see what they need to accomplish. So the people factor. So the key for this with planning is you want to set everyone up for success. So just like when we're developing our course curriculum, you want to make sure that you have your session planned out. So if you're developing a virtual session for a formal course and you have it as part of your instructional guidance should be incredibly detailed as to what your team is going to need or your facilitator is going to need while they, not only during the session, but leading up to the session. You want it detailed enough to, if have someone is not very adept at using technology, then you want to be able to walk them through how to set things up. You really want the facilitator to know what they need to be able to do. You also need to think about what roles are needed to run a successful and sustainable program. So for instance, in our IDLE course, or Instructor Developer of Online Learning course, we have a multiple instructor requirement. So Ms. Hall and Mr. Rosenkrantz, who teach that class full time, they take turns backing each other up, where someone will be facilitating the chat and then someone will be actually doing the lecture portion. So think about how you want to use multiple roles and what specific role is going to be. You also want to look at what your support materials are. So you want to ask yourself, what do you need to provide facilitators to help deliver the course? Is it going to be headsets? Do they need webcams? Do they need to have printouts of the activities? Do they need training on the software that they're going to be using? Also, what do you need to provide the participants as a reference before, during, and after? So as you can see, I provided you all with this workbook prior to the session because I knew that I wanted you to have it as a reference and for note taking while you were in the session. And also you want to determine, okay, who's going to send out the information? How will they receive the files and when? And what format is it going to be? So you want something that's user friendly. And what will you do to prepare for and plan your virtual session? And that, I mean, it's going to be specific for each person. Everyone conducts it differently. So you want to really look at how are you going to prepare for giving a session like this? What do you need to do to make yourself successful? So someone asked, what headset mic do you use or would recommend? So the one I'm using right now, so I'm wearing a headset right now. It's Logitech. I don't have the model number, but I can email that to you if you need it. Yeah, and someone says she just uses her AirPods. I literally sometimes just use my earphones with the little mic that I use for my cell phone. So it really is preference and what you're comfortable with. All right, and I'm going to end this with, this is what we call a virtual event roadmap. This graphic is in your workbook as well. And it kind of just gives you an idea of the steps that you're going to need to take as you're going through the session. So just as you're going through, and just be mindful that this is not going to happen overnight. It's going to take some planning. You are going to want to, understand what it is that you want to include. Be very mindful of how you want to have your students engage in the session. And there are ways to do everything that maybe not everything that you have in the classroom, but most things that you have in the classroom, you can still replicate that in your virtual classroom. Where does lesson design or ISD fit in the chart? Well, ISD you can essentially apply ISD to this chart, basically. Your identify your presenter topic data, that's essentially your analysis, writing your description and drafting your slides, creating your session, that's all essentially your development, and then your implementation is the actual session itself. So the roadmap itself is ISD, so it really is how you are planning out the session. Because you want to really think about what your topic is, what your goal is, what you want to accomplish. Then you're going to be actually designing the session itself, and then going through the development of the materials and then the implementation. All right, so that is pretty much all I have. Oh, it's my pleasure. I know that I like to have little things that go along with it. And yes, I like to say that these workbooks are kind of like your virtual goodie bag, so that you have something to take away with you. We are also going to be recording the session. And one thing, as I'm taking these slides off, please feel free to ask questions as we're kind of going through this. And then I did see a question. Give me just a minute. Will you ever collect the workbooks to know that students watched the videos? If it's a formal lesson, like if it's something that I'm asking students to complete as part of assignment, maybe if they are, if I want like the requirement is a video, then yes, I will actually have them upload their little note taker session. Oh, you're very welcome. Vernon, we are recording this, so we will, once it's downloaded, we're going to upload it to our YouTube session. See, why are you using Menti instead of the internal poll feature? The internal poll feature only has two options. So you have multiple choice and yes, no. I like the Menti feature because it gives you a little bit more options. So like this one is going to be a word cloud. So once people put the words in, it'll start showing up as a word cloud. Oh, you are all very welcome. And please feel free to reach out if you have any questions afterward. Yep, see, as you guys start putting words in, it's going to show up. Ah, you see? There you go. I'm so glad you guys all enjoyed it. And make sure you guys all come back. We have our next session next week. Oh, yeah, well, we've come a long way. I'm glad you liked it. And all of these sessions are always a learning experience. So as I have gone through all of these, I learn something new every time I do it. You are very welcome. Yes, I love this too. We have 2 more sessions related to virtual instruction, so come back. We have a session next week on web tools and another one on classroom management on the 6th. If you go to the menti.com and then have the and then hit that code, it'll let you add in your words. The multiple instructor requirement is as common as you want it to. Like I said, we have it in our courses. It's just a matter of writing it into our lesson plan and our plan of instruction. I can send the slides to you if you would like. Yes, thank you, George. I will send the slides in a follow-up email to everyone who registered. You are welcome. We typically need only one moderator. I had Mr. Rosenkrantz and Ms. Hall in this session simply because they're both my go-to people. So, but you really only usually need one. It also depends on the size of the class. You are welcome.